Before we begin our keynote, our afternoon keynote, can we just acknowledge the wonderful staff here at the Convention Center, the chef, the food. It was incredible. For our afternoon keynote, we have a very wonderful guest joining us all the way from Ottawa. Sarah Kambites is the Senior Director for Program and Innovation at the United Nations Association in Canada. Sarah is an educator with broad professional experience and expertise in the field of education, planning, policy, development, and program delivery in Canada, Africa, and with multilateral UN agencies. Before joining UNA Canada, Sarah worked as an educational consultant with the Rockefeller Foundation, UNICEF Education Section in New York, the Canadian International Development Agency, and with various development and non-governmental organizations. Her strongest contribution to youth engagement include using education as a developmental tool to reach the hard-to-serve marginalized population in society. She helped set up community learning programs in a number of African countries using formal and non-formal education modules. She has designed youth programs that use sport, media, and other experiential learning approaches to encourage empathy. She has served a number of governing boards, including Oxfam Canada, Play Soccer International Network, and until recently, the Ottawa Community Housing Board. Sarah holds a BA in Education and Greek Language from Hellenic College in Boston, Massachusetts, in Education and Psychology, and a PhD in Administrative Policy Studies and in Education from McGill University. Please join me in welcoming Sarah on her talk on building inclusive communities in Canada. Thank you.
Wow, good afternoon. Are you well fed? Yeah. Excellent, so am I. This is really humbling. I'm so humbled, privileged, and delighted to be standing in front of you and to talk about a program or a theme that is important to my heart. Diversity is a part of who we all are. But as you all know, it is so confusing to so many. It is so heated to so many. And I'm hoping together with you, we shall be able to put people at ease to say, it's okay, diversity is good for all of us. So first I would like to thank Jay for searching me out and for looking for opportunities on how we can work together to elevate and to lift and to bring about positive change. Jay came to me and I said, oh, I'm an African, why is he here? He found me, I didn't find him. And it was the best thing that ever happened to my professional development, and that's why I'm here today. But before I really go ahead, I wanted to make a disclaimer. The words and the views you're going to hear from me come from different angles. The uniqueness of who I am: a woman of color, a woman who's an immigrant, a woman who speaks one of Canada's official language, and I speak it with an interesting accent, but also a person who have worked so hard through my academic learnings and through my professional development, professional career development, to infuse diversity in everything I do. Before I open my mouth to walk in someone's shoes, to say, what if I was called upon to defend him? What would I say? That has allowed me to deal with some of the racism and the discrimination that I have encountered along the way. So now that that disclaimer is out, a little bit of that disclaimer, I'm technologically incompetent. So if the slide doesn't change, I may be appealing to my colleague to come and help. But really, I think I'm a bright woman, but technology really defeats me. Okay, that disclaimer is also out. All right. Now, let us talk a little bit about diversity. And I'm going to be doing a little bit of reading. And if I say some things and you don't understand them, frown, and I'll get it. I must have mispronounced things. I do assassinate the English language. But I was also really beaten in my elementary and high school to pronounce the language well, to speak it clearly, but grammatically correctly. So when I struggle and people say, after 40 years in Canada, where are you from? Oh, those who know me and my passion, they say, you are doing it on purpose. You don't want to lose that accent. Are you kidding me? So please don't think you're offending me if you say, what did she say? Sometimes I dismantle those words. So it's okay. This is how my presentation to you, all of us together, is going to go. I really want us to define, to give a little bit of meaning to the words of building inclusive communities. What is involved in that? Then I really would like to talk more about what a multi-inter or intra-generational dialogue should look like, because I have to tell you, we need to infuse that in every person who graduates from a university to understand that multi and intergenerational discussions are good for all of us. And thirdly, I'll talk a little bit about the programs that we do at the United Nations Association in Canada, the organization I work for, and the type of how we bring about this complex and often controversial theme of diversity, which frightens so many people. My excitement today, as a matter of fact, as I sat in lunch and listening to the blossoming conversation around my table, is that I am so counted among the people who presented today. What richness, what understanding, the breadth of a shared knowledge and a shared journey. I had it in the presentation today. I had it around the tables of conversation. So thank you. It's truly a privilege and an excitement. And as I'm sitting there listening, especially to the young generation, which keeps me going every day, it is so clear that diversity resonates with Canadians. And a conference like this and similar ones around the globe, our country, really, really underscores that this is a theme and a notion that has to continue to be put on the table and not be thrown away. Now, many of you probably know conversation and heated debates. We cannot deny that diversity really rubs some people the wrong way. And I'll mention some of my experiences dealing with it. But these blossoming conversations are the indication that the notion of diversity is important to Canadians. And it is important that we all strive to raise awareness, generate even rage and concern, but also support actions that lead to understanding of diversity as a staple in Canadian society, as a Canadian given, so that we don't have to, like you say hockey, where, in Canada? I want people around the world, when you say diversity, they say, Canadian, eh? That would be a good feeling, because really, it's something we should be proud of. As a woman who has traveled, I came from a developing world, and I'll do a quiz with you to see if you can guess. But many years ago, And I just have been so blessed to work for the UN part of my life so that I have been able to visit African countries that I only read in geography. And then to have this job which have taken me from coast to coast to coast across Canada. There isn't a province and a territory I haven't been to. So when I talk about diversity and the views that I bring, it comes from that, not only my narrow definition of who I am, but also from that broader experiences of across Canada, but also around the world. So when I say that these blossoming conversations are important and we need to strive them, let us not be shy. Let us be confident that we have the understanding. That is important. A caring attitude, that is also telling, because sometimes we understand and we shrug, but also the readiness, because that readiness allows us to be resilient and to take action. And we are able to explore ways to embrace essential Canadian value. Sometimes we think, oh, wow, Canadian values, give me a break. But trust me, the world envies Canada. And you probably won't believe me, but take my word for it. I have the microphone, so there, yeah. So, my first portion, I like us together to define what these three words mean: diversity, inclusion, and equity. If I was doing an exercise, if it was a workshop, not a keynote speaker, you'd be scribbling out because I'll be testing you. But anyway, together we shall be there. Because I like us to demystify these three words, because they all plug into diversity. How do we demystify that vocabulary? With a fundamental understanding that diversity is strength, not a liability to any country or to any community. So that is important for us to understand. I looked around because I had to bring my academic hat and say, okay, what definition should I use? Because to tell you the truth, all of them sound very good, but I liked this one. Diversity is the presence of difference within a given setting. For instance, in the workplace, we have diversity of identities, diversity of race, diversity of gender, ethnicity, religion, which are all the things have been covered already, educational background, opinions, sometimes even attitudes, etc. So in summary, diversity is a range of characteristics that make individuals unique. A person is not diverse. Sarah Kambites is not a diverse woman. You are not diverse people. You are unique. You are an individual unit. So when you put us all together, these little pieces, it creates a whole. So that shouldn't be complicated. I don't know why when we say, diversity of Canadian, everybody goes tense, or other people like me celebrate. It is that simple. Little units, pieces and bits and pieces put together, and they create that diversity. How many, by a show of hands, how many of you are gardeners, flowers? Really? Few? Some flowers look nice if they are all marigolds. Others, I don't know the names of the flowers, but trust me, I have a wonderful garden. My daughter said, Mom, if you die, people will know you died. Because my garden, I create, those flowers, when they start to blossom together, that is the diversity I'm talking about. So let us think in those little simple terminologies that we all blossom when we bring our diversity together. Then you're going to say, okay, so what is inclusion? That is another interesting terminology, which I think we should demystify. So inclusion is about the pieces having a space and a part to play in the whole place. You have a space allocated, but also a part to play. Like you can say we're having a play about Columbus invented something. What did he do? Something like that. So if it is a play, you say, okay, you play Columbus, you play the captain of the boat, you play the indigenous people who came, and then you say, oh, no, but you don't have a part to play. I'm going to be the one talking. That's not inclusion. So think of those pieces coming together and play together, space and a part to play in the whole part. But it's also about appreciating and valuing differences. Don't just say, I see you, yeah, you are there. No, appreciate and acknowledge that human, value it, because you never know how it's going to enrich who you are or what you try to be. So in a way, those differences creating that sense of what? We all want a sense of belonging. That sense of belonging is that what irritates some of us when they say, where are you from? 40 years, I'm Canadian. But I think a previous speaker did put it in a nice context. They don't say it by being mean. I mean, what won't give it away with this accent that people need to know, you were not born here. You know, so all of these little things, the sensitivity we bring, and I think it was Sam who talked about language, it is still hits us a feeling, and down in my presentation I'll be talking about when you are listening to others, how we should be listening. So everybody wants to be respected and valued, and all those little pieces, we have to be purposeful in choosing inclusion. We have to be purposeful. We don't want it to be imposed on us. It is so easy. It is so easy to just say, I value, I like you. In a way, you get that out of the way, because then there's nothing to argue about. But then again, if you don't become purposeful in including others, then there is always that tug of war. So I think by including those little pieces, it's a good thing. By the way, Canada is not the only country struggling with this sense of diversity, inclusion, and belonging. As I said, I have been through so many countries. It's so funny. You go to a Scandinavian country and you say, I'm from Canada. He said, yeah, can I talk to you about your mode of diversity and inclusion? It is interesting that the world thinks Canada has the formula on diversity and inclusion. And I think in a way, as me who has been where, I was telling my young colleague here, she was saying, where are you from? And I said, and she said, because I was born here, but my parents are from this. I said, for 40 years, I have worked so hard to be Canadian, because being a Ugandan, I gave it away. Okay. Being a Ugandan was handed to me. I didn't work for it. But boy, I have worked hard to be a Canadian, to speak like a Canadian. Okay, speaking, I'm still working on it. But I love hockey with a passion, not because I'm trying to be Canadian, but it was the only thing which made sense versus football, American football, that is. I said, it's like football at home, and there's a net there. So I have really been working quite hard. I even tried downhill skiing. I'm not gonna. But that is a purposeful decision. I want to be part of this fabric, this mosaic, this diversity. And countries in Europe, countries in South and Latin America, countries of Africa, because Africa is having its own share. My. We are having, I think people marginalize it and call it tribalism. But trust me, people are moving. We are not the only country that accepts immigrants or refugees. So this is all to say, let us perfect our diversity, inclusion, and equity. We can productize it. We can market it, because countries are looking for workable solutions. So this is not to say, okay, we went to the conference in Ajax, we're done, back to business as usual. Perfect it, be purposeful, because I think we really can be proud Canadians in selling it. All right. Then this brings me back, as we build our social cohesion, to the third word for us to define or to find the terminology for us to give meaning to, and that is equity. So you have diversity, you have inclusion, but then you need equity. And equity, this is a definition I found very useful, is an approach that ensures everyone has access to the same opportunities. I remember an expression that talent and intelligence is nothing with no opportunity. So I really think equity here sums it up very nice. Furthermore, equity recognizes the advantages and barriers that exist, and that as a result, we all don't start from the same place. Equity is about fairness, sameness, opportunities for all, upholding rights of individuals, and valuing the other two, diversity and inclusion. Now, I don't know where I got this, so I put it down, source unknown. It said, and I like it, equity is a process that begins by acknowledging the unequal starting place and continue to correct and address the imbalances. We'll talk a little bit more about that one. So how do we align this understanding with what research informs us about Canada? Now, this is where the technology is going to challenge me. We all know now, we heard from previous presenters, Canada is a country of immigrants. Yay! Now, nearly 22% of Canadians are newcomers. Someone told me this morning, no, you're not a newcomer. Really? I'm not? No, because this is really refers to people 5, 6 years. I've been here 40 years. So I'm an immigrant, but I'm not a newcomer. Phew, okay. But we all come, this 22% comes from all around the globe, and that number will only continue to grow. You heard me say, phew, because when you're a newcomer, there's so much struggles, there's so much learning, there's so much getting in touch with self, but also with those around you. When you think you are no longer defined within that, you say, phew, okay, now I can move on. Oh, can I? So those are all questions. So by 2036, research tells us, it is projected that anywhere between 24 and 30% of Canadians will be immigrants. Is this where I turn it on? Okay. What do you see there? I can't see it. Is that the one? Yes. So, that's where we are. By 2030, that's where we're going to be. And I wanted to share something which my superior in one of my workspace tells me, Sarah, you know, by 2025, I'm going to be a visible minority in Toronto. She happens to be Caucasian. And I said, oh, yeah? And because she's my superior, I said, oh, yeah? But you're going to be consuming 85% of the available resources. And you could see the pause, but those conversations need to be had. So while Canada's society is becoming more and more diverse, racialized, or people of color, persons continue to face the greatest barriers. Statistics shows that racialized persons living in poverty, and I want you to pay attention, they are more likely to be young, married, immigrants, highly educated, but unemployed. I want that to settle in a little bit. I think I have another diagram. It did. Celeste, my right hand, will come and help. Should I take the credit? So as this diagram shows about the population of visible minorities, if that is the picture, and we are saying that we are growing and the racialized people, this is the status, so why is this important to know, and why do we care? I think that's why I'm standing here. Because we need to find workable solutions to building healthy, socially inclusive, cohesive communities that celebrate the diversity of their citizens, that is communities, and creating inclusive spaces and opportunities for all. Inclusion is about correcting the historical injustices and disadvantages in a way that integrates groups rather than deepening the racial, economic, and social divisions. I have to say, the Canada I have been struggling to be part of is making conscious effort to correct these injustices. Such efforts include making multiculturalism policies as a part of our operations, creating immigration structures so you know in what point of entry you can come into this country. Now I understand currently there is name-blind job recruitment. So if my name is Sarah or Joke, you don't say, no, put that resume over there. So I don't know how that is going to play out, because all the CVs that I get at my place of work when I'm hiring, they still have people's name. But that is food for thought. But that doesn't mean that's the end in all. Then also there is the formal public apologies for past discriminating policies, etc. Those are all efforts. These steps may not be perfect, but they will continue to be revised and improved upon as our society evolves. And that is not a responsibility of me or of the elected official, it's the responsibility of you. You are the people, you are the citizens, you vote for these people. Make your voices heard. If you are seeing that what is in place is not suitable to building that Canadian social cohesion, make your voice be heard. Because I'm telling you, you can do it. The question for us today is, if inclusion is an idea of giving all citizens the chances to participate equally in economic, social, political, and cultural life of community, how do we as citizens maintain this social cohesion within our community that are diversifying and changing so rapidly, where there are so many barriers and these barriers continue to persist? How do we uphold diversity, inclusion, and equity faced with the shifting immigration trends, a generation of every young person here, you make my life, because my hope is in the youth. But let me tell you about these young people. They are aware, they are empowered, and they are impatient to activate change. I have 4 of them in my household. Trust me, I know. But also in that mix of our inclusion, there is the likes of the aging, demographics, the baby boomers. We are living longer than ever before. We refuse to go away. We are still feeling very productive. And yes, we are seeing governmental resources and services shrinking. So how do we start to say, this is how we're going to be inclusive? A simple answer or a scapegoat answer here is that diversity, inclusion, and equity are fundamental Canadian values. They are our shared aspirations, and they are an integral part of our shared identity. This is why we need to be purposeful in upholding these values, particularly during times of uncertainty, upheaval, despair, when the world doesn't make sense anymore. That is when we have to double down on those values, because at the end of the day, we stand a better chance. We need to continue discussions on diversity with a clear understanding that creating inclusive communities is active hard work. And it takes so much determination to be resilient. And this goes beyond just taking the initiative not to exclude. You need to just say, I'm going to do A, B, C, and D to make sure that inclusion happens. It's so funny because it's simple. Sometimes even a kind word. How was your day? And someone gives you a dissertation. Be patient and listen to how their day went. That is being inclusion. We are so rushed going from point A, point B. Hi. Oh, I should share this one. When I first came to North America, I was only 17, and I was in a very interesting school, stay nameless. Coming from a very polite society, people say, hi, sir. I say, I'm fine, how are you? And they'll turn around, being frank American, and say, I didn't ask you how you are. I just said, hi. It took me forever that people can just greet you by saying, hi. Well, the people I come from, greeting takes for a long time. We even ask about the chickens. Because I think we want to create conversations. We want to bring you in. And the children are, okay, did you say the grandchildren, they don't have malaria? Oh, that's good. That's good. You know, it goes on and on and on. Until I had hi, I didn't know how cumbersome and, exhausting my culture was in terms of greetings. So I wanted now to shift to the second part of my agenda, now that we have kind of tapped our feet in defining the terminologies. Why are we talking about building inclusive communities and to make it a multi-generational responsibility? Again, this will come at the end of my presentation, but I'm going to read it now. What is an inclusive community? A welcoming and inclusive community is a community where its citizens and members, they feel safe, respected, and comfortable of being themselves, and expressing all aspects of their identities. It is a place where each person shares a sense of belonging with its other member. It is home. I'm going to leave it at the end of my presentation, so maybe you can take a selfie of it, something like that. Yeah. I will use multi-generational, intergenerational, or intragenerational terminologies interchangeably. A push for intergenerational dialogue, I notice, is gaining impetus in Canada. However, in my opinion, we can still do better. How many of you, by a show of hand, have a grandparent living with you? Oh, how lucky. How lucky, yeah. Okay, so we need to create that space for multi-generational dialogue and exercise active listening. The chief mentioned here, my elder here, the elder mentioned active listening, and I said, she stole my presentation. But that is what we are, active listening. We don't listen much. We like to talk. You agree? Yeah. Okay. We tend to bring intellectual voices to our conversations. We always like to appear we are knowledgeable. We always like to appear that your position is the last one to be heard. I don't know if you have run across people like that on TV or elsewhere, I don't know. But let us see how we can listen on 3 levels. And I want you to take this back with you so that whenever you are listening, listen at 3 levels at any conversation. You listen for facts. Isolate facts and say, okay, it rained yesterday. That's a fact. But I also want you to listen to someone who's speaking with feelings. What is he feeling? What is he trying to communicate with me about, it was raining so hard, the car was sliding everywhere, as I was traumatized. That is a feeling. Someone is telling you, they're sharing a piece of you. That's the second level of listening. And people don't just talk for the sake of talking. The third level of active listening gives purpose. So you listen for facts. And I want you to do it at your dinner table. Say, okay, John, you listen for facts, you listen for feelings, and you listen for purpose. I'm going to tell a story. And then it's good dinner conversation. They'll tell you, oh, Mom, you said this. And you see, sometimes young people will mix feelings with facts. It is a good mental exercise to have active listening and listen at those three levels. The point I'm trying to make here is that creating safe space between older and younger generation to discuss and share experiences, skills, aspiration, and sometimes really disappointments, enhances that multi-generational solidarity on social issues like diversity and inclusion and equity. Because youth can share in the experience of their parents and grandparents' generations and navigate together how to turn challenges to opportunities. Older individuals I have found here in Canada, more so than in Africa, although now that I look back, they probably didn't tell me much. They tried to spare my feelings. But I noticed that here, older individuals who have faced injustice and inequalities tend to not want to overburden the young generation with those misery. They try to protect the young people from feeling the pain they felt. They tend to say, just focus on your future, dear. Do the best you can be without wanting to touch on those, but think of it. Right now, we have these conversations going around about the residential schools, and I have taken away so much from sitting from some of those generations who are children of those who were from the residential schools, to get a complete understanding. So multi-generation and intergenerational discussions are good for all of us, for the young people. But you know what? They are also good for the aging populations. I do know that now there is emerging literature. Oh, actually, it's not emerging. It has been around. It's just that I'm stumbling on it. On multi-generational trauma of racism on citizens, or multi-generation trauma of any sort. And I think that's why the older generation tries so much to protect young kids from hearing the negative. But I'm telling you, we inherit that trauma whether we want or not, because it's become part of our DNA, which we need to kind of, and I think through these conversations and asking questions back and forth, maybe we're starting to peel away from that trauma and from that pain. I don't know. Even though this is beyond the scope of my presentation, I strongly agree that this type of research underscored the point of multi-generational responsibility to build inclusive, caring, and equitable communities. At this point, to contextualize what I have been struggling with throughout my professional career, I'm proud of it, is to talk a little bit about the United Nations Association in Canada and the strategies it uses to promote diversity education and anti-racism. I've been with the organization now for about 16 years, and over the past 15 years, the association has used what we call empathy-based learning approaches to bridging those who are disadvantaged and marginalized. Through experiential learning, we cultivate a generation of youth who are aware, concerned, and equipped with the skills to bring about positive change. They are impatient. They can't wait until someone does it for them. So at least let us prepare them along the way. And we try to do this through our programs. Or we try to say, let us do some kind of model simulation. Has anyone in this room ever done Model UN? Hey, high five, high five. It's a good way to understand the complexity of the UN. You know how people say, what's the UN doing about this? Until you have done the model simulation, you have no idea how complicated that organization is. It is so complicated, and it's so powerless, really, because it is as strong as its member states can make it. We are now 193 countries as a member state of the UN, we all have our cultures, we all have our opinion, aspirations, and economical needs. How are we going to have a consensus on anything, especially when we have the 5 who have the veto power? I think Jay said we shouldn't make it political, so let me stop there. But I have found that borrowing from that model UN simulation and bring it to any topic of discussion and say, okay, we are dealing with such an issue, you be that, you be that, you be that, and defend. Oh, of course you have to do your research and understand what does that body do, what this, but when you come, you defend the position you never have defended. That is important. That's what we call experiential. That we call simulation and empathy-based learning, walking in someone else's shoe. We also use peer-to-peer mentoring. I have to tell you, teachers in the room, block your ears. Young people learn more from their peers than they learn from us. So we really, really need to encourage those to peer-to-peer mentoring and dialogue, because they seem to have the same language. They don't care whether the Minister of Education is going to score them that they didn't fulfill the expected learning outcomes. They just talk and learn. So I tend to use that in the program at UNA Canada that we've done. We also encourage shadowing. One of the things we have discovered is that many organizations have not many young people on their boards of governance, as if you have to be a certain age before you serve on the board. And really, diversity is also about age. So we need, if we want these young people to inherit the earth, to inherit our future policies, we should bring them along the same way we teach them about literacy, numeracy, and writing. We should teach them a little bit about diversity literacy. By the way, I have a project which may come out, if the powers are above, which will fund it. I think we really need to have diversity literacy so everybody knows what language we use, what we don't use, and they have to be universal, similar to sign language. So it's coming to a neighborhood near you. Just, wait a little bit. We also encourage a little bit of placing young people with organizations that do things so that they can learn by observing, so they can see the environment of work, so that they can see how things happen. And if they have a mentor there who can say, you have any question, and create that room of inclusion and that these young people can ask this question, maybe we are building that inclusion, diversity, and equity as they grow and become professionals themselves. The multi-generational dialogue adds another layer to the critical thinking of our youth, and I see it as a constructive policy in addressing diversity, inclusion, and equity. Now, you're going to say, well, what is UN, United Nations Association in Canada? Are you guys the UN? No, we are not. We are a non-government organization. We are people's movement for the UN, created 1 year after the UN. The UN turned 63 this year, we are 62. And our mandate, every UNA, United Nations Association in the world, we are about 110 of that. UNA Canada is one of those founders in 1946, is to educate and engage our citizens about the UN and the global issues that affect us all, and they affect us domestically. But UNA Canada goes a step further. We bring made in Canada promising practices back to the UN and back to the global commons. Because when I travel and they say, oh yeah, Canada does this very well, boy, I feel proud. Justly or unjustly, I just take the credit. So it is good that you know that as an organization that affects it, and this year, 2018, celebrated the 70th anniversary of something very, very pertinent to the conference today. Anyone knows what we are celebrating? Someone is Googling it quickly. That's nice. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights. It turned 70 this year. December 10th, wherever you are, get up and celebrate 70 years of human rights. And we here in Canada, we should actually celebrate even more. Why? Because it was our own Canadian, John Humphrey, who authored the original document or draft. Actually, it is in my alma mater at McGill. The handwritten document of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights is sitting at the McGill Library. So he drafted it, but later on it passed by the UN General Assembly on December 10, 1948. Why am I belaboring? Why am I exhausting you with this? Because diversity, inclusion, and equity are human rights issues. They are part of that human rights emphasis. So, but the UN, to show how relevant it is to all of us, designated other important universal days, decades, or months. And I'm going to mention just a few. There was a UN declared a right of indigenous peoples and what we call UNDRIP to encourage its 193 member states to address the human rights violations of their indigenous populations. And I'll be telling you a little bit about that because the town of Ajax and UNA Canada, we're going to be doing something together about that UNDRIP here in Ajax, and because of Jay. So a little bit of clapping for Jay. Now, this one is close to my heart. In 2014, the UN designated or declared an international decade for people of African descent. Long overdue, I would say. So, thank you. So we're going to be traveling this journey until 2040, focusing on 3 themes: recognition of the people of African descent, justice for the people of African descent, and development for the people of African descent, because we are all over the world, you know, and we all look differently, by the way, but we are all descendants of Africa. So that is a good thing. And you say, oh, so it doesn't only apply to Canada. You mean the UN? Of course, 193 members, they all have these issues. So the UN saw it suitable, appropriate to acknowledge. And let us not overlook Agenda 2030. I'm sure many of you have listened to it, and I think it's called the Sustainable Development Goals, or SDGs. There are 17 of them. They get more and more. Every time we think we have made inroads, we increase the goals. But I want you, and if you don't know them yet, we have our information table there. Yes, which has all these goals. And many of them align with the conference of today. Poverty, hunger, education, gender equality, health. Those are all human rights. So it is through UN structure that UNA Canada engages Canadians. And as I said, on March 21st, the town of Ajax and UNA Canada will be back here to celebrate a program which my colleague Alex is overseeing. It's called Youth Navigate the Truth and Reconciliation Calls to Action. 94 calls to action, and these young people are saying on March 21st, this is how we think we're going to do it from their own perspective. And we're going to have a symposium here, and please save the date. I'd like to wrap up my presentation by echoing our Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, who said, diversity in Canada is a fact. Inclusion is a choice. How we are going to make that choice and elevate inclusion and all diversity vision in our community and life is our challenge. Today is a good day to reflect and learn about our inclusive Canadian communities. Let us take advantage of the opportunities for multi-generational dialogue as we create a sense of belonging for our fellow citizens. Thank you for your attentiveness and for sharing a part of you with me today.